TheSFSG System, HMS Queen Elizabeth II, Vanguard-class battlecruiser, in geosynchronous orbit of Albion, June 16, 2176 AD. After Vice President Laurent faded away, the two leaders of the TheSFSG alliance shared a look before Sully rubbed his beard in frustration as Phileas looked back at the holoscreen with a thoughtful expression. Well, that didn't take long, huh, Phil? We haven't even landed back on the surface yet, and our new friend is already asking us to reinforce them with ships. Phileas nodded absent-mindedly as he continued to stare at the astrometric maps the Vice President had sent along with his message. The location of the highlighted star system was all the way on the other side of the insectoid empire, far further than any Tau-Cetan ship had ever ventured before. Well, we did agree to contribute to the cause, Sully, though this request is being made far sooner than expected. Did you notice the change in the Vice President's demeanor and voice? He is clearly embarrassed, perhaps maybe even a little bit ashamed of having to ask for help so soon after our meeting. He probably thinks this is making the Republic look weak, and do not forget what the intelligence dossier assessment about him said. Having to ask this of us so soon after attempting to bargain from a position of strength was probably incredibly difficult for him. Yeah, I can see that. Sully agreed somewhat sympathetically as he tapped on the desk control to activate the tactile interface and began to manipulate the map with his hands and fingers. After zooming in on the highlighted system for a moment, he expanded the map again and then plotted a course from Alliance space to the blinking insectoid system before adding the pertinent distance calculations. That system is all the way on the ass end of insectoid space, and most of our warships have never ventured beyond human territory, Phil. We've never tested our long-range capabilities beyond 500 light-years, and this is exactly why I have been saying we've been remiss in allowing our expeditionary capabilities to go to shit. Phileas grunted in agreement as he eyed the plotted course for a moment before replying. I know, Sully, but we don't control the purse strings. The Joint Congress does. Their insistence on focusing on defensive capabilities, along with their refusal to fund the expansion of our supply and logistical capabilities, is now biting us in the arse, it seems. Ass, Phil, not arse, Sully complained good-naturedly before turning serious again as he continued to manipulate the holomap. I'm going to connect with the Milnet to display our current readiness and fleet dispositions. Phileas continued to look at the map, while Sully quickly connected to the Milnet, already formulating a backup plan in his mind as new icons began to populate the outlined borders of Alliance space, which extended 1 light-year from the TheSFSG system. Thanks to those cheap dumbasses in Congress, these are the only ships technically capable of making the journey there and back that can be ready to go within 24 hours, Phil, Sully said with barely concealed disgust as he pointed towards the new flashing icons, making a pulling motion with his fingers to bundle them together. Sully neatly condensed all the highlighted icons into a floating data bundle before flicking them out underneath the map. The flashing icons splashed against the empty space beneath the map and then organized themselves into a comprehensive list with registry numbers, ship classes, and other critical information. Phil leaned forward and quickly absorbed the displayed information before looking away and shaking his head in frustration. That's all our currently deployed missile cruisers and battle cruisers in it? Our esteemed colleagues are not going to allow us to send them so far away from the homeland, Sully. Sully snorted before looking at his friend. Our predecessors should never have agreed to share operational control of our respective military forces with the Joint Congress. Signing the War Powers Resolution Act of 2167 was a big mistake on both their parts, Phil. Most of these civilian morons are incapable of executing a goddamn pillow fight, and yet they control our funding and can dictate military policy to people like us, and now look at the mess this is getting us into. This is turning into a goddamn goat rope, Phil. Phileas nodded sympathetically as he avoided making eye contact and silently prayed Sully wasn't about to use this situation to launch into one of his citizen versus resident tirades again. His fervent hope was dashed a moment later as Sully began to gesture animatedly at the map with his hands. This is exactly what I am talking about, Phil. This is why we need to change our constitutions to only allow those who have honorably served the Alliance and showed they were willing to fight and die for it to run for the Senate and the House of Lords. This would better the Alliance immeasurably while still allowing the civilians who never served to have their seats in our respective houses and local councils. Many of our veterans would gladly serve as senators and lords, but they don't want to be around those snakes, and I don't blame them one bit for that. I'm telling you, you have to read Starship Troopers, Phil. Heinlein had some good ideas about service and earning the right to a federal voting franchise. If we could make this happen. Phileas groaned inwardly and looked down at the deck, not really in the mood to hear it again as he took his glasses off and pinched the bridge of his nose. Sully continued venting, but he wasn't really listening anymore as he stared at the alloyed deck plating, utterly exhausted by it all. I'm long overdue for holiday, and now this shite happens. Woe is you, Phileas, he thought bitterly, not realizing that Sully had finally stopped venting and was talking directly to him again. Pardon. I said I'm sorry, pal. I know you have listened to me go off about this many times before, and I'll shut the hell up now, Sully said in an apologetic tone, clearly embarrassed by his ranting. Giving him a slight smile before wearily putting his glasses back on, Phileas blinked several times to try to get rid of the gritty feeling in his eyes before replying. It's okay, Sully. Forgive me, old chap. I'm just very tired for some reason. Do you have an idea for how to get those ships out there? I was thinking we can offer to fortify Republic space again with our ships like we did when the old Commonwealth was going to invade. This way the Republic can free up their own ships, and we can forego having to get the Joint Congress involved since the deployment would still be within our purview as outlined by the War Powers Resolution. Sully smiled deviously before replying. I was thinking that too, but I also have an idea for deploying the missile cruisers and battle cruisers beyond the limits. I was thinking we can frame it as sending a contingent to represent the Alliance in what looks to me like a quadrant-wide wargaming exercise. Doesn't it look like that to you as well, Prime Minister? Sully gave an exaggerated wink, clearly pleased with himself as he continued laying out his plan. The Joint Congress has been indicating that they want to expand the Alliance's presence beyond the Republic's sphere of influence and create new trading opportunities with the lesser-known and more distant regional powers. Now that the old Commonwealth is no longer the largest exporter of goods and services in the quadrant. Participating in this joint exercise would be a perfect opportunity to expand our reach and influence. Wouldn't you agree, Phil? I'm sure Congress would like to further enrich our already overflowing coffers, and this will also allow our crews to gain the expeditionary experience we will need when those Jurassic freaks finally reach the quadrant. Phileas snorted at the cheeky sarcasm in Sully's voice as he emphasized joint exercise with air quotes, and Phileas could see the wheels turning as the president's eyes took on a shrewd and calculating look before continuing. We will also benefit greatly from participating, since Laurent clearly stated in the message that we would be granted complete access to any technology transfer agreements the Republic makes with the refugee convoy. This will be our first exposure to non-native tech from beyond the quadrant, and who knows what they might have. That was a good point about the potential technology transfers, and Phileas couldn't help but smile as he imagined the chagrin of the senator and MP members from the Homeland First Party when they finally realized they had been outmaneuvered. They will be incensed, especially when they belatedly discover the Alliance ships are already too far out to be recalled by the time they figure it out without making the Alliance look bad. I like where you are going with this, Sully. So what's the next step? I'd like to get started so we can give our new friend an answer as soon as possible. Sully smiled broadly at that, clearly excited to execute the plan and screw with the opposition parties aligned against them in the Joint Congress. He had been playing games with their opponents and getting them to make a series of political miscalculations that harmed them in the press. But this just might be the coup de grace Sully had been waiting for to really thumb them in the eye. Let's verify the current fleet dispositions and statuses with the Admiralty and the Joint Chiefs first, and then we can get our Secretaries of War involved and let them take over. I want to go home and wake up my grandkids to spend some time with them before giving the good news to my daughter and wife. I want us all prepared and well-rested for when our esteemed Malit guests arrive tomorrow. Yes, you should do that, Sully. Phileas agreed before leaning over and giving his friend a comforting squeeze on the forearm. I'm so happy for you, old chap. I have a good feeling that everything is going to turn out just fine, but I will pray for you and your family nevertheless. Sully gratefully tapped on Phileas's hand before leaning over and holding his hand out. They both clasped each other's hands in the power handshake from the famous pre-war Predator movie they loved to watch together as cadets in the academy. Thanks for always having my back, Phil. Likewise, Sully. Let's get to it then. Magna-lit High Council chamber. The 8 members of the High Council exchanged glances with each other after the message from Vice President Laurent blanked out, not bothering to speak as they shared thoughts through the chamber's Neuralink. After a flurry of exchanges, they all nodded in agreement with each other before Honored Elder Fildir flicked a finger to open a direct connection to the Faria Prime null space relay. The High Council continued to share thoughts for an additional 12 solar minutes as they waited for Honored Elder Hrethnir to join them. Though all the other honored elders already knew how Hrethnir would vote, they had yet to reach consensus on the matter, though a clear majority were in favor of assisting the sons and daughters of the Magnati in their attempt to rescue the unknown refugee fleet that had violated insectoid space. The null space relay beeped before Honored Elder Hrethnir's exosuit shimmered into existence in front of them, the only member of the council wearing an exosuit for this emergency session. After raising both hands in greetings, Honored Elder Hrethnir addressed the High Councilors. I ask your forgiveness for making you all wait, my esteemed colleagues. The pacification efforts on Faria Prime have been requiring my full attention to prevent the fighting from spilling out beyond the capital district, and the holdouts have been sporadically jamming our communications. Fildir replied for the council, having been selected to manage the meeting by all the others before starting the emergency session. There is nothing to forgive, Honored Elder Hrethnir. I am surprised to hear there is still sufficient resistance to warrant your direct involvement. Are the Class 4 combat droids incapable of suppressing the rebels, or perhaps you do not have enough of them for the task at hand? There was an uncharacteristic shifting of the exosuit footpads that the honored elders immediately picked up on, and they exchanged glances again as they continued to wait. Several solar seconds ticked by, which was again highly unusual and noticed by the honored elders before Hrethnir finally answered. The truth is that the remaining royal guards and the tribal forces of the former Privy Councillor have been conducting themselves in a dishonorable fashion, honored elders. They tricked not only me, but also the new king and his Privy Councillor by dispersing and blending into the civilian population when the time came for them to relinquish their uniforms and weapons. They have become an insurgency, and the Farian military and tribal militias do not have the requisite skills they need to effectively fight in dense urban environments. The Farian forces have been injudicious in their response to attacks, and unrest was steadily increasing in the capital because of civilian deaths and collateral damage, on top of the cowardly sabotage attacks and disruptions to essential services such as power, water, medical centers, and food distribution complexes. Hrethnir stopped speaking, and the exosuit shifted again, causing the honored elders to share another look amongst themselves as they absorbed the disturbing news. After another long moment, the exosuit speakers activated again, and this time they could clearly hear the frustration in Hrethnir's voice. Another troubling aspect to all of this is the fact that the royal guards have miniaturized versions of the Farian energy-dampening devices, and they use them to great effect against our combat droids by luring them into heavily populated areas and setting off the concealed devices in well-planned ambushes. Because of the restrictions in the combat droids' programming, which prevent them from endangering civilian lives and infrastructure, the droids are often unable to properly respond and eliminate the rebels before they retreat and disappear back among the civilian population. Before I developed a viable countermeasure to the Farian mine devices with assistance from the Republic military, 387 droids were destroyed and another 529 were disabled or rendered combat ineffective by the cowardly attacks. Of the 2,000 Class 4 droids I brought down to the surface 3 days ago, only 937 are still fully functional and combat capable. The normally reserved members of the High Council were shocked by what Hrethnir had just told them, and for the first time in decacycles, a babble of voices erupted from them as they all began to speak out loud and try to talk over each other, a serious breach in decorum. This is not possible, and how could you let them shame us like this? Now the young ones know how to fight against and destroy our combat droids. This is a disaster. Why did it take you so long to develop a countermeasure? Did the rebels or the Farians get their hands on any salvageable tech of the Malit domain from the destroyed and damaged droids? I demand a vote to recall Honored Elder Hrethnir and withdraw all our forces from Faria Pri. Honored Elder Fieldeer, the oldest and most esteemed of them all, reached up and pressed on the auditory implant to deactivate it as the others continued to disrespect the sanctity of the High Council by speaking out of turn and interrupting each other. None of the others noticed as Fieldeer then brought forth the long unused resonator scepter from under its robes before slamming it against the ornately carved stone table. A loud, harmonic chime swelled outward like a bell struck deep underwater, resonating through the bodies and the skulls of everyone present, and forcing them all to grip their heads from the immense and unexpected pain. Having already turned off its own auditory implants, Fieldeer was unaffected by the painful sonic assault of the resonator scepter, and eyed the others with barely concealed disgust as they struggled to deactivate their own implants to end the terrible pain. Hrethner was also unaffected by the sonic wave of the resonator, though it was noticeably uncomfortable with what just happened, judging by the rapid movement of the lenses on the exosuit darting around and zooming in on the suffering honored elders. Deeming the others to have been sufficiently punished after 5 solar seconds had passed, Fieldeer pressed on a small stud on the resonator, mercifully shutting it off. The sonic wave ceased immediately, though the stone table still retained a hint of the acoustical vibrations for another 4 solar seconds, while the others gasped with relief as the excruciating pain in their skulls finally began to recede. Fieldeer waited exactly 10 more solar seconds before addressing the others verbally instead of using the Neurolink as its angry eyes flicked from one still distraught face to another. Shame! You have shamed the chamber of the High Council with your disrespectful and barbaric behavior. Are we honored elders of the Magnalit High Council, or have we become as one of the younger ones, incapable of conducting ourselves with dignity and grace? After giving the other 7 honored elders a final baleful glance, Fieldeer turned its head to face Hrethner and held up both hands before bowing its head. The others immediately did the same, and Fieldeer addressed Hrethner directly, while still looking down at the top of the table. Honored Elder Hrethner, I ask that you forgive us for our insulting and disrespectful conduct. It is within your rights to demand sanctions be levied upon us for such an egregious breach of protocol. Please indicate which ones you wish to levy sanctions against. They shall be censured immediately. As they all continued to look down at the table, the sounds of Hrethner's lenses roaming over them could be easily heard in the now silent chamber, the soft whirring of the mechanisms sounding much louder than usual as they awaited Hrethner's judgment. After a few more solar seconds, the whirring of the lenses ceased, and Hrethner finally addressed the High Council again. I do not wish to levy sanctions or censure any of my esteemed colleagues, honored Elder Fieldeer. I desire instead that we forget this ever happened, and for all recordings of the unfortunate occurrence to be expunged from the database. Fieldeer slowly lifted its head back up and gazed at the hologram of the exosuit for a moment before speaking again. Once again, Hrethner, you prove yourself to be far wiser than your years. We thank you for your magnanimity, honored Elder Hrethner. Only after Fieldeer finished its statement of thanks did the others finally raise their heads back up to look at Hrethner, and they all touched their foreheads and then their lower left chests over their cardiac pumps to show thanks for forgiving them. Please continue, honored Elder Hrethner, Fieldeer said after giving the others another warning look before placing the resonator scepter on the table in front of it for all to see, an obvious threat indicating Fieldeer was ready to use it again if need be. Thank you, honored Elder Fieldeer. As I was explaining, there have been some difficulties, and I was ultimately forced to utilize the services of our human allies to salvage the situation. The threat of an open rebellion among the general populace destabilizing the new government before it even had a chance to establish itself was too great to ignore, despite my initial desire for King Urla to assume control of the capital with his own forces and the allied houses. After speaking with King Urla and Privy Councillor Skarl, they officially requested assistance from the Republic ground forces despite my reservations. I then spoke with Admiral Thompson and Combatant Commander General Jung, and I yielded to their wisdom in such matters and gave them authorization to enter the capital and assist the new government. They recommended deploying elements of the 82nd Airborne Division and the 1st Marine Division, and within 16 solar hours of entering the city, the fierce warriors of the 82nd Airborne and the 1st Marines killed over 5,000 of the insurgents in the capital, and the surrounding outer districts with far fewer civilian casualties than both I and my companion had projected. Hrethnir paused for a moment as if carefully considering its next words. "Honored elders, I must confess it was astonishing to witness the martial skills of our kin children firsthand. We have all seen the holovids of the humans taking back the conquered worlds of the dead zone from the insectoids. But that was a different enemy, and what I saw here has forced me to reevaluate our chances of victory in the coming war. I can tell you now, honored elders, that our concerns about our kin children having lost their large-scale ground combat abilities after 100 cycles of peace were unfounded, and should no longer trouble us so. They truly are the sons and daughters of the Magnati, and for the first time since we discovered the hateful enemy was coming back, I not only have hope, but now I also have faith in our eventual victory. I will show you what I speak of. One moment, please." Hrethnir flicked several fingers rapidly, and after tying in the exosuit to the chamber's quantum projection system, addressed the High Council again. "This is a recording of the first 2 battles fought between our kin children and the rebels. Please observe closely." The entire chamber disappeared, and the High Council found itself on a wide boulevard bordered on both sides with towering buildings that blocked out the red giant, casting the surrounding environs into a permanent twilight. The boulevard was littered with mounds of uncollected trash and the burnt husks of both civilian and military vehicles, and the stench of rotting garbage and death, mixed with the caustic smell of melted trilithium batteries, lingered in the stale and unmoving air. Several honored elders gagged at the smell, which the others studiously ignored as they grabbed the hems of their robes and covered their own now ashen faces in a futile attempt to block out the quantum projection's olfactory renderings now permeating the chamber. There were hundreds of Farians furtively rushing about and shouting warnings to each other as they tried to enter the ground-level shops and building lobbies to find safety. A disheveled Farian constable with a filthy uniform covered in soot and dried purple blood was using a broadcaster, urging the civilians to get inside as quickly as possible, while his wild eyes darted around. "By order of our king, get yourselves to safety. All Farians are to return to their homes or seek safety wherever they can now. The Republic soldiers are here to liberate you at the request of our king and privy councillor. Any Farians interfering with or attacking our human allies shall be flayed. The families and tribes of any Farian killed by the humans or the rebels on these streets will not be allowed to claim blood vengeance or life debt in recompense. This is your final warning." The sounds of weapons fire erupted beyond the bend of the boulevard, and the constable looked in the direction of the sudden battle sounds before rushing to take cover behind the burnt shell of a Farian armored carrier while still urging the few remaining civilians to get away to safety. The weapons fire had been steadily getting closer, and now the sounds could be isolated as they echoed off the towering tenements and into the boulevard. The distinct sizzling of Farian plasma rifles was answered by the ominous whistling of Republic sliver rounds, the staccato tat-tat-tat-tat of their micro-explosive tips reverberating into the urban canyon. Over 3 dozen Farians in civilian dress with bright yellow cloths wrapped around their upper right arms came leaping around the bend, screaming in the secret battle language of the Royal Guards as they began to take positions behind any cover they could find. The quantum field projection AI automatically translated the battle language, and the incomprehensible yells of the rebel guards turned into Magnoliti. The rebels were trying to coordinate a counterattack against the coming humans, and several of them began to toss small constructs in front of the bend. The objects began to disappear after clattering to a halt on the plastcrete pavement as their stealth systems turned on, and the rebels all sighted their rifles and mobile plasma turrets on the bend, which was now a choke point that would funnel the advancing Republic forces into a kill zone. The boulevard was now eerily quiet as the rebels silently waited for the enemy to come, and the Republic forces were not making any noises to indicate they were approaching the choke point. This continued for almost a full solar minute before there were sudden whistling sounds, followed by over a dozen rebel heads exploding into clouds of purple mist as several large rolling objects suddenly appeared from around the bend and splayed open, revealing themselves to be 4-legged automated security drones that began to fire large-caliber sliver rounds at the hiding rebels as they skittered around in a randomized pattern. The other rebels immediately opened fire on the choke point, erroneously believing the humans were sniping them from the bend while still shrouded and using the security drones as a distraction to keep themselves hidden. One of the drones was quickly destroyed, but the others clambered onto the walls a few meters above the ground while continuing to fire at the rebels and pinning them down as they used the ornate architectural plastcrete veneers for cover. None of the rebels thought to look above them, assuming the humans had not entered the boulevard proper because none of the proximity mines had gone off yet, and their lack of situational awareness doomed them as they failed to notice the camouflaged Republic warriors clinging to the tenement walls 20 meters above and surrounding them. None of the honored elders had seen them either until the AI silhouetted the Republic warriors with a faint outline of their bodies, and even with that, it was almost impossible to see them because of the camouflage systems blending them perfectly with the walls. 3 shrouded Republic EMP drones abruptly materialized out of thin air as they dropped their shrouds and dive-bombed towards the stealthed mines and the 2 mobile plasma turrets, activating right before impact and discharging their pulses. The semi-translucent blue waves spread out over the boulevard and intersected each other, immediately rendering all circuitry and electronics within the area of effect inoperative. As the rebels vainly tried to fire their now useless weapons, the Republic warriors above them let go of the walls and silently fell towards the still unsuspecting enemy. The first hint of the death coming from above was when the altitude jets kicked in right before impact, but the rebels were too stunned to react in time as the camouflage systems deactivated, revealing black combat-suited Republic warriors stabbing or beheading them with vicious-looking short swords. The Republic warriors, assisted by their suits and AIs, moved far faster than possible for mere biologicals, and more than half the rebels were already dead before they finally recognized the threat among them. The humans continued their assault, making strange running jumps or flipping themselves off walls and expertly using wreckage to launch themselves at the few remaining rebel survivors with remarkable speed and agility. Within 10 solar seconds of the Republic warriors dropping on them, every rebel had been eliminated, and only black-suited warriors with purple-blooded short swords remained standing, the stylized AA combat patches of the 82nd Airborne now visible under their left shoulder joints. A terrified male Farian voice rang out from under one of the destroyed Farian personnel carriers, causing every Republic warrior to pivot towards the source. "I submit. Please accept my submission. I am a constable and loyal to the king. Please do not eat me. I am of House Herklat, and we have been allied to Privy Councillor Skarl's house for 12 generations. Please spare me." More Republic drones appeared over the boulevard as they dropped their shrouds, and one of them darted directly for the Farian carrier and scanned it before backing away as the Republic warriors ordered the constable to come out. The constable was too terrified to do so, still convinced the human demons were going to kill and eat him, and one of the warriors had to go and roughly pull out the pleading constable before injecting him with something that immediately knocked him out. The quantum projection shimmered, removing the boulevard and transporting the High Council right in the middle of a pitched battle in what seemed to be an industrial district with shipyards and cargo lift facilities. All around them were heavily damaged or destroyed warehouses and loading areas, and thousands of small, coherent plasma bolts shot across the battle space and above dozens of camouflaged Republic warriors, low-crawling on the ground as they steadily advanced towards the defenders. The only reason why any of the honored elders were able to see the Republic warriors was because of the AI outlining their forms again, as the combat suits were perfectly blended with the black plastcrete pavement, and the mildly radioactive smoke they were advancing through provided further protection against being spotted. Behind the crawling Republic warriors were others, using cargo crates for cover and expertly laying down suppressive fire on the rebel defenders. Multiple teams of 3 warriors each were behind stacks of large shipping containers and firing plasma mortars at the defenders, using shrouded Overwatch drones to zero in on their targets. The crawling warriors stopped advancing once they were 50 meters away from the rebel defenders, and a few solar seconds later, a flight of 4 reconfigured Republic starfighters streaked overhead before sharply climbing as they pirouetted to prevent targeting locks from any potential rebel anti-air assets. The AI had been translating both the Farian and Republic comms, and now they heard the lead pilot as she broadcasted over the encrypted Republic comms. "Xerox to all ground troops, activate blackout function. Retinal burners have been deployed. Get some, First Marines." From the blackness of the night sky, dozens of flares activated and began to fall slowly to the ground, illuminating the entire district. Most of the Farian rebels, unable to help themselves, began to look at the dropping flares, some of them attempting to shoot at them with their plasma rifles. The rebels were so concerned with the flares exposing their positions that they didn't notice the Republic warriors were no longer firing at them, and the entire projection blanked out in a brilliant bright light for 5 solar seconds before returning to normal. The honored elders stared in disbelief at the sight of over 300 moaning Farian rebels, feebly stumbling around or lying on the ground as they called out for help, their voices filled with pure terror as they looked around with empty, bloody eye sockets. The crawling Republic warriors that had been waiting sprang into action, silently charging across the remaining 50 meters before throwing themselves at the now blinded rebels and mercilessly dispatching them. None of the rebels had been offered quarter, and the projection shimmered briefly before turning off. None of the honored elders seemed to be able to speak right away, and Hrethner waited patiently as they collected themselves. Finally, Fildir spoke out loud, its voice filled with disbelief. "After our Magnati cousin kin and our protectors were cruelly taken from us, we Magnalit were bereft, and we were less without them. And now we are less without them." All of the honored elders intoned reverently in response to the sacred words. After the appropriate amount of time passed, Fildir continued. "These humans fight like our cousin kin, perhaps even better. But are they wise like they were? Why did they not capture any of the rebels, Hrethner? Did they have to slaughter those blinded rebels like that? I saw our kin-children fight like their ancestors, but I am concerned that their fighting abilities have far outstripped their maturity. We need them to win this war, but I fear by the time it is over, they will reign supreme and no longer accept our guidance and wisdom if we achieve victory. What if they decide to turn against us? We have given them Magnati ships and some of our own technology, and for the first time, one of the younger ones could fight us if they wished to do so. They are not only great warriors, but they are also extremely intelligent, excellent scientists and engineers, and prodigious shipbuilders. If they return to their old ways, we will be forced to punish them, and all we have tried to do for millennia would be for naught. Soon there will not be enough of us left to maintain our long-standing control over the quadrant, and if they decide to elevate themselves above all others, I fear we might not be able to stop them." The lenses of the exosuit roamed over all the honored elders before settling back on Fildir, and Hrethner responded without modulating its emotional state, so they could clearly hear the anger as it pointed an accusing finger at them. "You were not on Faria Prime, honored elders. You did not see the atrocities the rebels committed against their own people. You did not see the flayed civilians or the aftermath of the indiscriminate bombings that targeted schools and innocents trying to get food and water. You did not watch as our kin-children were forced to pick up the random limbs and pieces of entire families, who were cruelly torn apart by plasma bombs and nail-studded explosives, and try to match them together so they may be buried properly with their loved ones. You did not see the holos of the brutal capture and torture perpetrated on the families of tribal militia leaders to force them to stay out of the fighting or join the rebels under threat of executing their mates and hatchlings. The Royal Guards and their allies are irredeemable fanatics, and I for one applaud the Republic warriors for exterminating them. Would you like me to show the High Council the records of these atrocities? I thought to spare you all, but perhaps I was mistaken." A long silence followed Hrethner's threat before Fildir finally responded. "We will not debase ourselves by viewing such evils, Hrethner. What is your point?" "My point is I saw all of this, and so did our kin-children. They did not take prisoners and slaughter the rebels for their own satisfaction or to sate their bloodlust. They refused to take prisoners because they were avenging all those Farian innocents who suffered and died because of the evil rebels. They did it because they know what happens when evil is not hunted down and extinguished whenever it is found. They learned their lessons from their own past, and they know in their bones that true evil must never be allowed to be excused or accepted. Otherwise, it will flourish and spread while feeding on those who cannot or will not fight for themselves." Another long and uncomfortable silence lingered in the chamber before Honored Elder Silnir spoke out for the first time, holding both hands up while addressing the others. Hrethner is right. It is not our place to question the motivations of our kin children. Do we forget already why this emergency session has been called in the first place? They have asked us for help in rescuing unknown refugees who are surely fleeing from the Balrican onslaught, and that does not seem to be the actions of a species bent on domination. They fought for the Eliani and the Jalini, and they did what we once thought impossible. They made peace with the insectoids. They have obeyed us in all things, and I believe they will continue to do so until the time to join our departed cousin kin comes upon us. It is not right that we presume to use them to protect this quadrant and lead the younger races to victory while still not trusting them unequivocally. This is not the proper conduct of an ally, and it is an insult to the memories of our long-gone cousin kin from whom they are descended. Silnir put its hands down, and Hrethner bowed slightly in thanks before turning the lenses back to Fildir. You called me here to vote on whether or not the Malit domain should help our allies rescue these refugees. I do not have time to bicker over nonsense, and I will not stand here quietly while others dare to question the motivations of our kin children, who have conducted themselves with far greater grace and honor than we give them credit for. I propose we vote on the matter now. I vote yes. Over the next 2 solar minutes, the rest of the High Council silently debated the issue as they shared thoughts over the Neurolink, and after the vote was tallied, Fildir raised both hands and spoke in an officious voice for the record. By a vote of 6-3 in favor, the High Council will respond to the request of the Republic of Humanity and send ships to help them rescue the unknown refugee fleet. Who among us will volunteer to go oversee the efforts? I will, honored Elder Fildir. All looked towards Silnir, greatly surprised by its offer to oversee the efforts and go with the Malit contingent. Silnir had never left the homeworld, and it was well known that the honored elder suffered from a severe case of astrophobia. Avoiding looking them in the eyes, Silnir spoke quietly as it looked down at the table. My progeny, Darsil, is going to the American and Albion tribe system to cure the birthing creche infection and attempt to repair the genetic damage that was inflicted on hundreds of thousands of their children. I have not seen Darsil in many cycles since we last argued over its refusal to follow in my footsteps, and we have been separated ever since. I wish to try to make amends, and this will give me the opportunity to do so. I cannot chance us failing to reconcile if the coming war goes badly for us. I do not wish to go to the Creator to face judgment while still estranged from my progeny. The others looked uncomfortable, as it was an extremely personal thing to admit to them, considering the very private nature of the Magna Lete. Surprisingly, Fildir was the first to respond, its voice almost gentle. We shall pray for the Creator to see that you are reconciled with your progeny, Silnir. It is proper that you attempt to end your estrangement so your issue may know your love again. You will go with our ships then with the blessing of the High Council. Honored Elder Hrethner will remain at Faria Prime until no longer needed, and I will go with Silnir to speak with the High Command and put together an appropriate contingent to represent the Malit domain in this rescue effort. This session is adjourned. Fildir stood up and all the others followed suit. One by one, the holograms of the honored elders faded until only Fildir and Hrethner remained. After eyeing Hrethner for several solar seconds, Fildir finally spoke again. I hope you are right about our kin children, Hrethner. They do not know the true nature of the Balricans, and I fear for what they will become when confronted with pure evil. They can only hope to win the coming war by exceeding the ferocity and brutality of the hateful creatures, and I am afraid they will lose their souls in the process if they are forced too far down a certain path in order to achieve victory. They have only had 100 cycles of peace in which to grow and better themselves, and I am saddened by the fact that they will need to become as they once were if we have any chance of winning this war. I know you love them as your own progeny, Hrethner, and I will pray to the Creator to keep their souls pure and good, so you may never know the anguish of seeing them returning to their old ways again. I do not think your heart could take such a betrayal, my friend. Fildir raised both hands. Its face roiled with rare emotion as the hologram faded away, leaving Hrethner alone in the High Council chamber. For a long time afterwards, Hrethner remained there, silent and unmoving as it thought about what Fildir said regarding the human children it loved without reservation. Truth of Slirlus, Trilusk class scout ship. Vault system, outer edge of scattered disk, 87.2 AU from primary. 31.8 solar hours since signal reciprocity with protector. Battle matron Laurie clacked her fangs together in apprehension as she tried to still her troubled soul. After flicking out her tongue, she rubbed it against the specialized glands on the roof of her mouth, tasting the same apprehension among her crusaders as the oily pheromone residues were absorbed and processed by her trilobed brain. After rendezvousing with the exalted fleet, Matriarch Nalas commanded her to immediately come and share her recollections. Laurie discarded any pretense of conducting herself with the dignity expected of such a high-ranking battle matron, and she sprinted through the massive flagship at her highest possible gait. She only slowed down near the sacred sanctum, where the matriarch was waiting for her, and she stepped into a mechanical junction off the main tunnel so she could cool down without showing weakness to any underlings who may come upon her. Head lowered, she opened her jaws wide and slackened her long tongue, allowing the throat muscles to flutter. The gular membranes began vibrating to the stimulus from the throat muscles, rapidly fanning her core body heat out through the moist interior of the jaws to prevent her brain from overheating. Still feeling as if she was not cooling down fast enough, she consciously made her spinal feathers go erect before turning her back towards the maintenance vent, allowing the cooler air currents coming from it to pull away excess heat from the now exposed blood vessels and dendrites. After some time, she began to feel much better, and she closed her eyes, collecting herself and organizing her thoughts and arguments in a logical fashion like the teachers had taught her to do when she was their student. Once she felt ready, she slowly peered out into the main tunnel. Seeing none of her fellow crusaders around, she stepped out of the mechanical junction and quickly adjusted her harness before walking at a measured pace the rest of the way. She entered the sacred sanctum, acutely aware of when she had last come here to pray to the Creator. Long, dormant guilt began to stir inside her spirit, but she suppressed it as she headed towards the inner sanctum where the matriarch was waiting for her. Seeing Matriarch Nalas sitting on the simple stone bench as she entered the inner sanctum, Laurie felt happiness come into her heart when her lifelong companion looked up and bared her fangs in joyful greeting. Laurie returned it, making sure to avert her eyes in proper submission as she waited for the matriarch to invite her to sit on the bench. Tapping blunted claws on the bench right next to her, the matriarch hooted softly before speaking, her voice filled with a playful imperiousness. "Come, old sister, and do sit next to me. There is no need to observe the proper courtesies when it is just you and I. Did we not know each other's scents in the birthing room and suckle our milk from the teats of the same wet nurse?" Laurie hooted softly in agreement and then quickly sprinted to the bench, positioning herself properly so her long, thin tail would slip into the cutout along the back edge as she sat down in the shallow depression that would be filled by her haunches. Once she was seated, Nalas gave her a long, searching look before dipping her head to indicate for Laurie to begin the recollections. Starting from when she had first left the exalted fleet, Laurie gave a concise summary of the events as they unfolded, and she could see the excitement in the matriarch's eyes as she described tasting the engines of the unknown ship that was of the same origin as their own. After traversing the great voids of death for so long, not only did they finally come across life in the system within the cluster, but now they had come across another unknown ship, which meant where they were going still teemed with life and had not yet been destroyed by the evil Balrikan. She described capturing the ship and then the signal reciprocity, and she could feel the silent approval being exuded by Nalas as she told of how she released the ship and began the process of properly introducing the exalted fleet to new potential allies. The approval turned into a deep shame that was easily discerned by the guilt in the eyes, and the matriarch's face scales flushed as Laurie described the visceral reaction of the mammalian ape Sheila Mikrahi, and her erroneous assumption that they were of the same ilk as the evil and hateful Balrikan. Laurie told the truth in every recollection except for one thing, and she allowed her admiration for the fighting skills of Sheila Mikrahi and her underlings to come to life in her words, describing in great detail how their small and heavily damaged ship fought like a cornered Skurlaska fighting to protect its young against great odds. She could see the matriarch's eyes dilating and her breath quickening as she recollected the beginnings of the battle and described how they decimated the Balrikan despite the great odds facing them, and the heroic sacrifices of the Crusaders on the other ships. Her voice faltered as she then recollected how the mammalian apeship was struck with a mortal blow, and she looked away as she stopped speaking, afraid to confess what she had done and failed to recollect before. Nalas noticed and trilled softly in misunderstanding before speaking gently. "You did what you could, old sister, and none can fault you for failing, so I will not. It is a shame I will not get to meet Sheila Mikrahi in this life. She sounds like a true battle matron and someone I could have considered a companion and ally." Still averting her gaze, Laurie responded hesitantly, speaking just barely loud enough to be heard. "She still lives, Nalas. I invoked Tharishul and ordered our ships to protect her and her underlings at all costs. I regret not recollecting this as I should have." Nalas hissed lowly as her head reared back and the spinal feathers went erect, seeming more shocked than angry as she clacked her jaws together anxiously before speaking again. This time she was speaking not as Nalas the companion like she was before, but as the matriarch, and the emotional dynamic of the room changed. "Look at me, Laurie. Look me in the eyes and tell me why you did this." Laurie lifted her head, feeling her face scales flushing as she forced herself to look into the eyes of her matriarch. The pupils were now constricted into a thin line, and there was no longer any hint of the prior love and happiness that were in them when she first entered the inner sanctum. All her prior preparations and thought organization vanished, leaving her floundering without her logical and well-prepared arguments. The matriarch continued peering at her, waiting for her justification of invoking Tharishul, and endangering the exalted fleet for a battle matron and stranger they did not truly know yet. "It is hard to properly explain, matriarch. When she mistakenly thought we were the evil Balrican, she did not flee or submit to our overpowering advantage. She instead overloaded her core and charged at us, matriarch. She wanted to die with honor and take as many of us as she could to the afterlife with her like a true battle matron would, rather than flee like a coward or allow us to take her and her underlings as spoils. I saw this, and I thought if she was willing to do this, then others of her kind would be too. And are these not the kind of allies we had hoped to find? Crusaders like us who would fight and die to their last breath to kill our hateful cousin kin." Laurie stopped speaking, overcome with wild emotions that threatened to break her composure. The matriarch recognized the inner turmoil she was undergoing and remained silent, allowing her the time needed to collect herself. Once she was ready, Laurie continued, determined to prove her point by speaking from the heart. "And when I told her that we were not the same as the evil Balrican and that I would remain and allow her to slay us to prove that we were different, she stopped the core overload, proving to me she was not only a wise and true battle matron, but also that she was not an evil slayer. In that moment she was no longer a stranger to me, but a true battle matron who also knew right from wrong. She not only had the courage to die with honor if need be, but also the wisdom to move past what I looked like and peer into my heart and soul so she might see who I truly am. This is why I invoked Tharishul, matriarch. I did not think on it and consider the consequences. My heart had already made the decision for me and said it was the right thing to do, so I listened to it." The matriarch's pupils dilated to their maximum size as she rapidly clacked her teeth together, the chattering sounds ringing throughout the inner sanctum and grating in Laurie's ear holes. It sounded almost exactly like the mating calls of the underground insects on their twin worlds that emerged every 6 cycles by the trillions to reproduce before dying, an occurrence that every Balrisar dreaded with all their being. As Laurie waited for the matriarch's judgment, she could see the internal conflict warring in the eyes, which were gateways to the soul. The chattering finally ceased as she saw the tiny muscles around the eye sockets relaxing and the pupils returning to normal before the matriarch spoke again. "I was not there, Laurie. It's not my place to condemn you for your decision, especially if it was made by the heart, but now you have bound us all to fulfilling the vow. I can only hope it was the right thing to do. Tell me everything and don't leave out any recollections this time, old sister." Laurie did as commanded, and now here she was on the periphery of the system as time seemed to slow its passage by 100-fold. 1.35 light cycles away, there were 5,000 warships death-feigning inside an emission nebula. Sent by the matriarch, to help Laurie fulfill the vow of the Thari Shul and rescue battle matron Sheila Mikrahi if need be. The rest of the exalted fleet was coming as well, though at a greatly reduced speed because of the need to protect their mining fabricator vessels and the massive arc ships that grew their food and housed millions of crusaders. Within 30 solar seconds of their arrival at the edge of the solar system, 200 of the black, menacingly fanged warships flashed out and assembled into a bowl-shaped formation with her lone ship nestled deep inside of it. She immediately recognized and appreciated the fact that Protector did not surround her ship entirely and chose this formation instead. It was denying her the ability to move any further into the system while still allowing her the option to retreat if she wished to, by only blocking her on 3 axes instead of 4. Despite opening a channel to the formation 4 times, there had been no signal reciprocity from the warships except for a curt response that was obviously artificial in nature and always said the same thing. Cease all attempts to communicate. We have not been authorized by Protector to engage in an exchange of sense with you. After the 4th rejection at signal reciprocity, Laurie stopped trying and instead focused on running combat and evasion drills to prepare for any eventuality, but mostly to distract herself from looking at the chronometer every few solar seconds. She was so engrossed with a series of mind-dropping and death-feigning drills, she failed to notice the sudden appearance of the massive warship that slipped out of null space without the usual brilliant flash before taking position 100,000 dracs directly in front of their bow. "Battle matron, another ship has flashed out." She snapped her head around immediately, hearing the anxiousness in the warning and looking at the main viewer. It was the same ship as before, which meant Protector was here. Like the others, the bow was fanged, and the 2 demon eyes of the particle turrets above the torpedo tubes within the snarling mouth glowed brightly, making her spinal feathers rise at the terrifying display of ferocious intent. She quickly glanced at the chronometer to confirm the time, seeing it was exactly 32 solar hours to the nanosecond when the warship flashed out. At least they are punctual. This shows great respect for others' time, she conceded as she raised her dominant upper hand and signaled for a channel to be opened. There was a series of beeps from the communication tech's console as the 2 ships ran their own individual security protocols to prevent any infiltration attempts, and after receiving the signal from the tech that all was well, Laurie inhaled deeply to begin speaking when an unexpected voice came over the audio intercoms. "I know that ship. Let me speak first. Larry, is that you?" She knew the voice, and her heart fluttered at the unexpected sound of it ringing throughout the command chamber as her mind stuttered and lost its bearings momentarily before she recovered. "Sheila Mikrahi, is this really you?" she asked hesitantly, her spinal feathers stiffening with sudden suspicion. What if this was a trick by the Protector? Voices could be fabricated, especially by an advanced and powerful artificial intelligence like Protector was. "Yes, Larry, it's me. I'm so happy it is you who has come. I was so worried about you and your people, even though Protector told me about what happened after it knocked me out like an asshole and kidnapped me." Before Laurie could respond, the cold and emotionless voice of Protector came over the channel. "You were being illogical and overly emotional, Sheila Mizrahi. I stunned you to prevent you from taking any action that would harm yourself and your crew. I do not appreciate being compared to a bodily orifice that expels waste. I have told you that. Can it, Protector? I told you it's just a figure of speech. And have I called you that again since then except in reference to that circumstance? No, I haven't. So do me a favor and disable your vocal processors for a moment so I can talk to my friend, okay? You will get your chance to talk after I am finished." "I do not appreciate your insolent demeanor, Sheila Mizrahi. You may be Magnati, but I am a Class 12 integrated neuronal intelligence, the most advanced one ever built by the Federation's Artificial Intelligence Institute. You would be wise to accord me the respect I am due." "Geez, don't get your algorithms all twisted in a bunch and turn Skynet on me, Protector. Let the adults talk first, and then you'll get your turn, okay? Good boy. Larry, are you still there? I'm sorry about that. I'm still potty training Protector, as you can see." Laurie was following along with the very unusual conversation between Sheila Mikrahi and Protector, though some of the words and terms could not be translated by the translation matrix in real time. but she understood enough to be greatly surprised by the strange dynamic between them. It did not seem like a normal captor-captive interaction. Still, she was highly suspicious, and her mind accelerated as she tried to think of a way to confirm this was really Sheila Mikrahai, and not a treacherous stratagem. Recollection of what she said to Sheila Mikrahi when she overloaded her core and charged at her ships came to the forefront, and she seized on it. Sheila Mikrahai, if this be truly you, then tell me what I said to you when you overloaded your core and charged at me. Only the true Sheila Mikrahi would know this and be able to tell me now. Several solar seconds passed before the familiar voice responded, sounding very serious and emotional. You said, if I killed you and your crew, then I would be a slayer who steals life from others like the Balricans do. You said you did not think I was a slayer, and that even if I did kill you, you would still call me sister and ask God to absolve me of the sin because I did not know any better. It's really me, Larry. Laurie felt her heart fluttering again at the words as they came over the audio intercoms. It was truly her, and she wanted to shriek with joy because Sheila Mikrahi was not only still alive, but she was also here now speaking with her. Laurie forced herself to remain still and composed even as her body trembled with relief, wondering how to proceed now that her ally was here. Before she could acknowledge the battle matron's words, Protector came back over the channel. That was an unnecessarily convoluted way to verify your identity, Sheila Mizrahi. It would have been far simpler to just open visual communications. I do not understand why they are still refusing to establish a visual interface. My scans indicate their communications array has been replaced, so there is no battle damage preventing them from doing so this time. It seems extremely suspect, and my calculations indicate a high probability it is because they are hiding something. Laurie's whole body clenched at the Protector's astute observation, and she made the signal to prepare to initiate an emergency flash-out in case the artificial intelligence acted on its suspicions when Sheila Mikrahi responded to it. I told you, Protector, they have a religious prohibition that does not allow them to reveal their faces or bodies to any who are not bloodkin. This is why they wear clothing that covers their whole face and body, only allowing the eyes to be seen. Right, Larry? Isn't this what you told me when I asked why you wouldn't allow me to see your face when we first established visual communication before your array was damaged in the battle? It took Laurie a few moments to understand what Sheila Mikrahi was trying to convey with the untrue statement, a delay that Protector seized on to interrupt again. I find this highly unlikely, Sheila Mizrahi. It is not typical of a civilization to become spacefaring with such religious taboos still exerting this type of influence. I have scanned my databases multiple times and have yet to find any. It is not proper for you to still be harping on this, Protector. Do you remember when I showed you several cultures on my own world that had and still have such restrictions? And did I not show you that the Malit do the same thing and hide themselves now? No pun intended, but you need to let sleeping dogs lie and move on, Protector. Larry, are you still there? I apologize for the unintended insensitivity of Protector. It does not have the proper understanding of cultural and religious idiosyncrasies. I hope you can forgive us so we may move on. Now that Protector has been informed of your religious restrictions, do you require time to fully veil yourself so we may establish visual communications and perhaps come to an agreement that would benefit us all? We all have the same enemy, and it seems to me we should make common cause and try to form an alliance if possible. I offer my services to mediate between you both as a representative of the Republic of Humanity. What say you? Full understanding of what Sheila Mikrahi was trying to do dawned on her mind, and Laurie bared her fangs happily as she recognized the intelligent foresight and deviousness of the mammalian battle matron. Not wishing to allow Protector to interrupt again, Laurie answered immediately. Yes, we wish this. We require 5 solar minutes to properly veil and prepare ourselves for visual communication. Is this acceptable to the both of you? Yes, I accept. Sheila Mikrahi answered immediately, her voice sounding both excited and worried to Laurie's ears. The artificial voice of Protector came over the audio intercoms a moment later. I accept. Please initiate the visual interface as soon as your religious requirements are fulfilled. We will be waiting. Laurie signaled for the channel to be closed and waited for the tech to confirm it had been done, and was now safe to speak before leaping up and trilling loudly to get everyone's attention. Once they were all looking at her, she pointed to the communications and weapons techs. "We do not have much time. You two, go and get large fabrics that will cover our entire bodies. We need 4 of them, and get cutters as well so we can make holes for the eyes. Go now and come back as fast as you can." As the 2 techs immediately obeyed and sprinted out of the chamber, she pointed at her second. "You will remain here with me and the other 2 techs. I know you are good with drawing, yes? Go get your satchel and quickly look up simple religious iconography from one of the dead worlds we came across in our records. I want you to draw some of the iconography on the cloths to keep up the religious pretense, but keep it simple for now since we do not have much time. The rest of you, exit the chamber and wait in the corridor. You are to prevent anyone else from entering the chamber. Go now." As all the other underlings responded to her command and began to quickly leave the chamber in a disciplined and orderly fashion, her second stepped closer and spoke quietly. "What of our eyes, battle matron? We have yet to come across any others that have eyes like we and the evil ones do." Laurie jerked her head back in surprise, not having thought of that at all. "You are correct, Second Hero. I did not even think of that." "I had an idea on that, battle matron. We can don the goggles the torch cutters and welders use in their tasks. They can go over the cloths and hide our eyes, and the artificial intelligence may well assume it is normal since we're already hiding our face and body." "Excellent thought, Second Hero. Have 4 of them sent to us immediately." As the second unhooked the communicator from his harness, the other 2 techs came back into the chamber, their arms filled with large bundles of dark gray cloth that looked like the table coverings they used for the communal meals. They dropped the cloths on the deck and quickly began to separate them as the second gave her the signal that the goggles were on their way before sprinting to his station and pulling out a small artist's satchel from under it. "Remember, keep it simple," she called out to remind him as the 2 techs began to cut small holes in the middle of the now separated sheets. Hiral acknowledged her reminder before he accessed the databanks and began to peer intently at the images being shown on the small screens. Looking at the large chronometer above the main viewer, Laurie felt equal measures of excitement and worry surging through her body as she watched the others hurrying to finish their tasks before the allotted time ran out. "I hope this works," she thought to herself, as the second got down on the ground and began to draw around the 2 eye holes of the first sheet with bright red paint. Looking back at the chronometer, she saw that just over 3 solar minutes remained. "I should have said 10 solar minutes," she chided herself as the second finished with the first sheet and moved over to the next one.